and welcome everybody to this live session from the wonderful now energy efficiency capital of the world, Sønderborg. And today in this session we will be speaking Power to X, because a lot of cool stuff is going on within that industry. And also we've just heard the announcement of a really big wind turbine farm of 150 gigawatts being established by 4 leading Northern European countries. We've seen the EU pledge of actually 40 gigawatts of hydrogen production. Why? Why are these things connected? They are because hydrogen can actually be the bridge between our renewable energy sources and hard-to-decarbonize sectors. In its pure form, hydrogen can be utilized directly, or it can be transformed into other e-fuels such as e-kerosene or e-ammonia. So, by converting sustainable energy sources, we can actually reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. And today's live session, I have 3 guests joining me, and my first guest today is Peter Markussen from Energinet, and welcome, Peter.
Yeah, thank you very much, Louise, and thank you very much for inviting us here to Sønderborg, the global capital of energy efficiency we heard today. And it is true, it is really here that the world is and looking at energy efficiency. So I work for the Danish transmission system operator, Energinet. We have the responsibility for the electricity and gas transmission grid, and also the long-term planning of the energy system, and also the day-to-day security of supply in our control center. And we will therefore also play a very important role in Power to X, Power to Hydrogen, where we are connecting the wind turbines, the solar farms that will deliver the green electricity, and we will also connect the electrolyzers that will produce all the hydrogen, and maybe we will even also, maybe in some of our gas pipelines, transport some of the hydrogen. So we are very much part of making this happen as well, because it is important for to have green hydrogen and to reduce CO2 emissions in these hard-to-abate sectors that we have, especially transport and energy-intensive industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with your international outlook and your understanding of the energy infrastructure, what would you say is different this time? Because we've had this hydrogen trend before, and both in the 70s and in the 90s, but what's different this time?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I started in this sector 20 years ago, and there hydrogen was also discussed as one of the products or services that could combat climate change, but it never really happened. But now I think 2 things. One is that there really is a commitment now, political commitment on national, European, global level to do something about climate change. We need to act now. And then, of course, we also now see that offshore wind, solar is competitive. The costs are very low, and we will also very fast see the same development for electrolyzers. That at least is the expectation. So now it can happen.
Yeah, and could you give us a few more examples of what's going on?
Yeah, you mentioned the 150 gigawatt of offshore wind in the North Sea as a first target, because you need a lot of electricity to do this. And you say in Denmark we have, well, at least the sun is shining a bit today, but we have a lot of wind, and that's the resource we can use, and we can get it from offshore wind. So we are planning now these energy islands. We have planned for at least 10 gigawatt here around 2030, and it will then increase together with our neighboring countries to more than 150 gigawatt. That's really a lot. So that's the one thing. But we also see a number of projects on producing hydrogen. If you have asked me 2 years ago, there have been almost none, but now there is more than 6 gigawatt of projects. And you say the peak capacity in Denmark today is 6 gigawatts, so it really is large compared to the Danish energy system. So things are moving on very fast, and we hope that we can facilitate that as well as a system transmission operator.
Yeah, so a lot of positive things are really going on, a lot of excitement, and you're saying also the prerequisites are actually in place, but are you seeing any challenges?
Yeah, of course there is the speed and to keep up and to understand what kind of technology we are looking at. But you can say on the one hand, so now we're talking energy efficiency.
Yes.
We also need to talk energy efficiency when we talk power to hydrogen, because we will use a lot of electricity for hydrogen, and we still need to do that very efficiently. So in Denmark, we have already a sector integration between electricity and heat, and we have a lot of district heating. So that's one way of achieving it, but also to make sure that you have an optimized system, and with both a lot of solar farms and wind and flexible consumption and data centers and then also power to X, the system will be very complex. Yes. So that's also a challenge, at least also for us as a transmission system operator, to then operate the system on hour to hour, minute to minute. So there we also need a number of digital solutions, for example, and we need to have develop new regulation to be able to connect and have a reliable system, so a resilient system.
Yeah, so you have all these decentralized producers of energy that you need to cope. And how are you doing that?
Yeah, well, it is to go more and more to real time. So we have real time information on what's the balance in the system. So that is one thing. But also we need to know how are we connecting. I think maybe you will hear from one of the other guests that it's a bit complicated to get connected to the grid. There is a lot of things you need to fulfill, but that is so that we have the reliability in the system. So it's not just about large power plants that then can make sure you have inertia in the system and give us security of supply and the robustness. It will now be a much more digital system with the inverter-based system. So we need to be aware of that as well. Yes. So that is also a challenge. And then maybe a third challenge we see as well is on things are moving fast, and wind turbines would like to be connected, and also power to hydrogen. But can the manufacturers of these technologies, can they also deliver? That, I think, is also a good question. What will be the price for that? You say it's not something we as Energinet have influence on, but you can say at least it can change the plans that we have. So that's something that we are try to find out what's the situation, and it's interesting to be here in Sønderborg to hear how other manufacturers are looking at their supply chains and how they work, and I hope that the other guests will also look at that questions as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because actually our two next guests might actually be good candidates for answering your question there. So very, very positive outlook and a reason for optimism for sure. Thank you very much, Peter, for being here today.
Yeah,
and we will be back in just 30 seconds with my next guest, Uffe Borup. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're back again, this time with Uffe Borup, the CTO of Everfuel and also the chairman of the hydrogen industry here in Denmark. And Uffe, in that capacity, could you reflect a little bit on why is all of this going on in this area of the world right now?
Louise, thank you. Thank you for having me here. My name is Uffe Borup, and I'm glad to be here. We basically at Everfuel, we build and operate electrolyzers and hydrogen infrastructure. And the reason why we do it here in Northern Europe is that we already have a very high share of renewable energy in the electricity system, as was mentioned before also. And we also have very high opportunity to build out both onshore and offshore and solar. So that means that's basically the fuel we need for this hydrogen sector to grow, is this green electricity to produce green hydrogen.
Yeah, because you're basing your systems on 100% renewables, or a wish to at least for 100% renewables. So therefore you need a good source material, I'm guessing.
Exactly.
So
so it's exciting right now, and I think these plants, we start to see them come up. So there is a lot of big plans for increasing the capacity of electrolyzers in the region. And we also see that projects actually start to be combinations of renewable electricity projects, generation, and the power-to-X piece. So basically, we use that to as also actually helping the further development of the renewable electricity, because we need conversion of the electricity when there's surplus of it.
Yeah. So how do you see then the role of power-to-X? Because it's about, of course, a little bit of time shifting because the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. But are there other advantages of power-to-X?
I think to build actually a resilient energy system for all the sectors. That also geopolitically is something that we can rely on, that we learn these days, that it's quite hard to be dependent on a lot of import of fossil fuel. So actually, building these integrated energy systems, we need to cover all the sectors, industry, transportation, heat, and everything else where we use energy. And some of these sectors we can electrify directly. But there's also a lot of these sectors where we need energy for other purposes. It can be for steel production. We need hydrogen instead of coal. So to decarbonize that process, we can actually reduce a lot of carbon footprint. We can also use it for e-fuels. And certainly, if we look at in the energy system, hydrogen is a perfect molecule that we can store also for seasonal storage. So instead of having to use electricity right here and right now when it's produced, we can actually convert it and then store it for later.
Yeah. So now, having settled on the ambition and the need that we have for our green transition, what, in your opinion, is required to make it happen in terms of legislation and policies and so on and so forth?
There's a lot of things that need to happen, and things are happening. So, of course, politically, you see the ambition is actually there, both on a national and European level. There's a very high belief that the power-to-X and the hydrogen is going to play a major role in actually transitioning both. Also from a climate point of view, to make sure we get a climate neutral setup. But of course, we also need to have the frameworks set in place. That's really important. So there can still be done a lot on the legislative part, to actually make sure that this is aligned. Denmark is not a big process industry country like some of our neighbors, but we do have the ability to do it. But of course, we also need to, be ambitious on all these things. So make sure that actually the development will happen here and not somewhere else. We are not alone. There's a lot of competition in hydrogen globally, actually.
Yeah.
And then of course we have, a lot of the other things that need to happen. The people and the technology that needs to be developed, and hopefully we can do that here in the region as well.
Yeah. So just to dwell a little bit on the legislation, because Peter was saying that power tracks and the electrolyzers, they are really, really heavy consumers of electricity themselves. And Peter was also reflecting a little bit on sector coupling. Could you reflect from your point of view?
I mean, we are here on an energy efficiency conference, so of course, and we have the project in Fredericia where we're building the first 20 megawatt project, and it's named High Synergy because we're actually working very much with the synergies between different energy systems. So we aim to actually utilize more than 90% of the electrical energy that we feed in has to come out of energy projects, products somewhere else. Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
The majority of it comes out as hydrogen, but we also integrating the heat, the byproduct heat, into the district heating system that feeds 400,000 people in the region, and also the oxygen part is quite a valuable product because some industries you have to produce this oxygen also from electricity, but here we can actually have it for as a byproduct. So there's really analyzing all these combinations is really interesting, and we are there next to the Crossbridge refinery and working very closely with them to integrate the product streams and the energy streams.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about the technology and combining all the sectors, and is it mature? Are we there where it can happen?
I think it can. I mean, it's important that we actually have a strong development of the technology alongside with building up the size of these plants. We have, as I said, built the first one, and there we have made some, I think, sound collaboration with the supply chain. And of course, there's a lot of areas where we can bring in technologies from other sectors. And this is of course a very important step, but we also need to make sure that we actually build some projects so that, let's say, the hydrogen supply chain really get a lot of projects to work on and to improve on and compete on. This is what we have seen in the wind and the solar sector. This is what works.
Yes.
It's not one giant step to end goal. It's 1,000 improvements, and some things work well and some things don't, and we need to find out what works and scale that up. And this goes step by step. So it's really, really important that we are forward thinking, both in the political and frame condition area, so we actually make sure that these things happen here. Otherwise, it will happen somewhere else, and then maybe we import it in 10 years, and that's no fun.
Oh no, we don't want that. So you were speaking a little bit about the people. Are you seeing the right competences? Are you seeing that here is the place?
I think a lot of strong capabilities especially also in this region. Okay. So we have a lot of strong companies in Denmark and Scandinavia and Germany. Especially, I mean, I'm representing hydrogen industry in Denmark,
and yes.
We have a lot of strong members, and they're really strong on the technology side also, developing the next generation of electrolyzers and fueling stations and other stuff that we need to integrate. So I've had high hopes it can happen here. Everybody's very busy working on these projects, and it's exciting.
So if we look up and a little bit into the world, you were saying that we have a strong competition across the world. Are you seeing it being a more mature industry now?
I think it will. It will come step by step. Of course, there's a lot of attention now and a lot of announcement of very big projects. I'm a bit more focused on the next step, and then we will get to the gigawatt projects also in a little bit later in the decade. But I think right now it's very exciting to see that actually projects in the medium size is starting to come up many places now, and this will be really, really important.
So a lot to integrate into Peter's utility network.
He'll be busy.
Yes, he will. So our next speaker is Søren Kroning from Danfoss. Do you have anything in particular you want him to address?
Well, of course, Danfoss is actually supplying to us the inverter equipment, and this is a very important piece of equipment in the chain and working up against the grid. So having a smooth integration with the grid, this is extremely important. So I hope Søren is working on that.
Well, let's ask him,
Yes.
because our next speaker will be Søren Kroning from Danfoss. Thank you very much, Uffe, for being here today, and we will be back in just about 30 seconds.
Thank you, Lisa.
And we are back, and now with Søren Kroning from Danfoss Drives. And you are the Senior Vice President of Global Sales Services and Marketing. It's a very long title.
Very long title, yeah.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining me here today at the Danfoss studios. So, we just had the pleasure of hearing from Energinet and from Everfuel on Power-to-X, and maybe you could also give your reflections.
Thanks, Louise, and thanks a lot. I'm very happy to be here today. So I think when you say Power-to-X, for me, we talk about decarbonization, and that's the whole agenda of the IEA event here in Sønderborg. And for me, decarbonization is a mix of energy efficiency, which I believe is crucial for our short-term gain, and of course the renewable transformation of our energy sector. And here Power-to-X plays a big role.
Yes, and there are a lot of things going on right now, but we know that there are challenges to be overcome when we need to make Power-to-X at a commercial scale, described by the other panel members. And I am pretty sure that Peter, for instance, would also ask you something about grid stability, and we have a little bit about maturity of technology and so on. With this increasingly distributed network utility and inverter-based, how do we do that? How do we ensure that we don't make it unstable?
First of all, it is so that when we are connecting more and more electronic devices on our grids, and the grids are getting more and more decentralized, there's a high risk of, or there is an impact of the electronic converters and electronic consumers to distort our net, make electrical noise on the net, and this is generating loss, which we somehow have to overcome. And with our power converters today, or the technology of power converters today, it is possible to mitigate some of these noise distortion on our grid, and by that secure a stable grid. You can say with our Danfoss power converters, we have designed them, we call it smart grid connection. So we are basically having technology inside our power converter that is measuring these disturbances, a little like when we are adapting our audible noise in our headphones and so on to eliminate the noise. We do that on the electrical grid as well. So the noise and the distortion and the loss that is coming from electronic devices and components on electrical grids, we can overcome that issue and that challenge by automatically adapt and have our power converters in a place where, or in a condition where they measure the noise and then generate additional noise, but with a 180-degree phase angle, as we call it in engineering, where we then eliminate the noise, and by that we can stabilize the grid. So you can say the power conversion is a distortion on the grid itself, but at the same time it is a mitigator that can help us stabilize this. Second to this, some of the other challenges can be mitigated by using power conversion to charge a battery, decharge a battery, so we can again secure stability on the grid by using power conversion technology in various formats.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So besides actually the power conversion unit, which is supplied by Danfoss Drives, there are other aspects, especially Uffe was talking about the actually 90% utilization of the energy coming in, and that goes into energy efficiency, but also the sector integration.
Yes, yes.
Which I believe you're also very interested in.
Yes, for sure. So, as I said a little earlier, the decarbonization is really a mix of energy efficiency, so reduce the amount of energy that we consume, and of course convert the energy to be renewable energy. And I believe personally there is a big gap in the way we are talking about this climate, let's say, mitigating the climate impact. And there is a gap between talking about renewable and the energy efficiency. That was also said today here in the conference. And it is important that we focus on the energy efficient for the short-term impact. And that is clearly needed for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is, according to IEA, 40% of the Paris COP21 goal is to be met by reducing the energy consumption. Second, we are all in an energy crisis, which was also said in here today by Dr. Uffe Borup. And there's no doubt that it is crucial that we make energy or reduce the amount of energy we use, reuse the energy that we actually use. And we have to do that before we can get the impact on the investment in converting to a renewable sector. The energy efficiency is something we can do right away. And Danfoss and other technology providers, we have the technology ready, so we can get these energy efficiency installations ongoing immediately with a very short payback time and an immediately impact. Renewable is, second to this, very important for the future, but it is medium to long term before the impact will come from the investments today. With the energy crisis we have today, we have of course the climate energy impact, we have the shortages, we need to get independent from Russian oil and gas, and at the same time we have a very high increase of the cost of energy or price of energy. All of this can be curbed very short term by focusing on energy efficiency. The energy we then are still consuming, we have to convert that to be renewable. And of course we have to reuse the energy, so we have to take advantage of the current technology as well and reuse the energy. As an example, exhausted heated air from production and facilities, which is today a loss. All of that can be reused in other facilities. And I think Sønderborg here is really a showcase of that technology, that we have to get out of the Danish borders and by that amplify the impact on the climate.
Yes, absolutely. And we really need to get this going. It was said repeatedly also this morning in the opening speeches. What's the feasibility of actually scaling up?
Yeah.
From a technology point of view?
So you can say we are in a supply shortage situation. All companies are facing these challenges. I believe we are all getting better in managing this situation. And I think it is important that selecting suppliers it's an important part of this, let's say, to overcome these challenges. And it is clearly a benefit of going with scale suppliers. And I believe if we look inside, we have been through various challenges. We are getting better and better in managing this with scale. It also means that we have, first of all, better availability now, but it also means that we are better prepared to scale up the demand, because the demand of some of these technologies will only increase with the transition to renewable and, of course, the focus on the energy efficiency. I personally believe that we are geared to scale up following that market. And we will overcome the short-term barriers we have there for sure. And by that we can support and we can still amplify the impact of our technologies seen from the climate point of view.
That is fantastic news.
Yes.
So just to wrap up for the day, we are ready for a green transition into 100% renewable-based energy supply. We have the technology ready. We can scale up.
Yes.
We need policymakers, we need governmental support, but the activities are happening. It is there. It's going step by step, as Uffe also was mentioning. So, actually, very, very good news. Søren, it was a pleasure to have you here.
It was a pleasure to be here, Louise, and I wish you continue a good day.
Thank you, and you
Yes.
too. And that is what we had on today's program. So thank you very much for following us.